The political landscape in Bangladesh has long been a volatile one where the change of power often comes with significant social upheaval. One of the most alarming consequences of these power shifts has been the recurrent targeting of minority communities, particularly Hindus. Hindus make up around 8 to 10% of the country's population. The ouster of Sheikh Hasina from power has now acted as a fresh trigger for renewed violence against this vulnerable community. We have seen since the 5th of August, when Hasina was dramatically forced to flee her country, the number of attacks against Hindu minorities has crossed over 200 and spread across more than 50 districts in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina, the leader of the Awami League and the longest-serving Prime Minister of Bangladesh, has been a significant figure in the country's political stability, particularly for minority rights. Under her leadership, there were efforts, although she was accused of being inconsistent at times, to try and protect religious minorities, including Hindus, from the kind of communal violence that has periodically plagued Bangladesh. Bangladesh has seen systemic targeting of Hindus, particularly during these upheavals of power, first when Mujib was assassinated and then the army took over, and then eventually from the army to when it made the democratic march. At different points of time, at different intervals, when there has been a shift in power, there have been targeted attacks against minorities. However, even during Sheikh Hasina's tenure, over the last 15 years, which was also marred by accusations of authoritarianism and human rights abuses, what it ended up doing is creating a polarizing environment. And that environment meant that minorities, Hindus, are all the more vulnerable. The fear among Bangladesh's Hindu community is not unfounded. Historically, whenever there's been a significant political shift in Bangladesh, Hindus have almost always found themselves caught in the crossfire. Before this current round of violence, the most recent example of what happened to Hindus was in October of 2021, where Hindus were targeted during the Durga Puja festivities, which is one of the most important festivals for Bengali Hindus. The violence was sparked by a social media post back then, which allegedly showed disrespect towards the Quran, and that led to widespread riots across Bangladesh. In the aftermath, Hindu temples were vandalized, homes and businesses were looted, and several people were killed. The violence spread to over a dozen districts, affecting thousands of Hindus. Sheikh Hasina's government back then came under attack for not doing enough to protect these Hindus. Also, if you wind the clock back 20 years from then, back to the 2001 general elections, when the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, allied with Islamist groups, came to power. In the aftermath of that election victory, there was a sharp increase in attacks on Hindus, including looting, rapes, and destruction of temples and homes. Now with the BNP, the same party, looking to come back to pole position in a bid to return to power after the next general elections, Bangladeshi Hindus are feeling vulnerable yet again. If Sheikh Hasina's government were to be replaced by a coalition that is similar to what came in 2001, a combination of the BNP and the Jamaat-e-Islami, there is a significant risk of a repeat of such violence. The opposition, the BNP and its Islamist allies, have a history of using religious sentiment to galvanize their base, and this often comes at the expense of minority communities. The rhetoric used during elections or political rallies often exacerbates these communal tensions, and it paints the minorities as the other and blames them for the country's economic woes. The rhetoric easily translates into violence when these groups come to power. The situation for Hindus in Bangladesh is also increased sharply by broader regional dynamics, particularly the relationship between Bangladesh and neighboring India. Sheikh Hasina's government had maintained very good relations with India, which has been a lifeline for Hindus in Bangladesh. A change in government will naturally lead to a deterioration in these relations between Delhi and Dhaka, and that makes the situation even more precarious for the Hindu community. Anti-India sentiment is often conflated with anti-Hindu sentiment, making Hindus an easy target. Moreover, the global rise of religious nationalism in the form of pan-Islamic global jihad further complicates the situation. As Islamists in Bangladesh become emboldened by their counterparts in West Asia and in other parts of the world, the Hindu community faces an increasingly uncertain future. Social media and other forms of new age communication have made it all the more easier to spread hate and to organize attacks. In recent years, Bangladesh has seen several disturbing instances of violence against the Hindu community. These incidents have occurred even during Sheikh Hasina's tenure, raising concerns about the safety and security of Hindus in Bangladesh, and particularly so if there were to be a shift in political power. In fact, according to the Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council, about 200 to 300 Hindu homes and other minority homes and businesses had been vandalized since the 5th of August when Hasina was forced out of power. About 15 to 20 Hindu temples have also been destroyed, and up to 40 people have been injured, though most of them are not seriously injured, according to a statement put out by the General Secretary of this organization, Rana Das Gupta. In fact, the Hindu groups have also written a letter to the new interim chief of the Bangladesh government, Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, that according to their count, 205 incidents of persecution of minorities have happened since the 5th of August. In response to this, Professor Yunus visited the famous Dhakeshwari Temple, one of the most famous Hindu shrines in the capital Dhaka. He met the religious minority groups there, and he assured them that his government will do everything in its power to protect minorities. He also said that in Bangladesh, rights and freedoms are the same for every citizen, irrespective of your religious persuasion. Now the question is, will Professor Yunus's government be able to walk the talk? India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his first message congratulating Dr. Yunus last week, had highlighted the plight of Bangladeshi Hindus and asked for extra protections for this vulnerable community, who of course have become even more susceptible to attacks after Hasina's ouster from power. And just this week, Vivek Ramaswamy has become the first mainstream American politician to raise the issue of targeted attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh. But violence against Hindus is not the only problem. The highest number of cases of cross-border infiltration into India in the form of illegal immigration come not from Pakistan, but from the India-Bangladesh border. This has been stated on record in a written reply provided by India's Home Minister to the Indian Parliament back in 2021. And just this past week, around a dozen Bangladeshis were apprehended while trying to infiltrate into India through West Bengal, Tripura, and the Meghalaya borders. There have been some heart-wrenching scenes of Bangladeshi Hindus in at least 4 different border crossings, standing in swampy, marshy land, pleading with BSF personnel to let them into India. The BSF, though, has been given standing instructions not to let any illegal immigrant in. One legal complication for many of these Bangladeshi Hindus who are hoping to escape into India is the new Citizenship Amendment Act, which only allows people who entered India before 2014 to claim citizenship. For these folks who are hoping to cross over now, the CAA is not particularly helpful. There have been instances of Bangladeshis who tried to cross over just in the past few months. Many of them have been apprehended in these 4 bordering states, West Bengal, Tripura, and Assam being primary among them. In addition to these large-scale incidents of violence and cross-border infiltration, there have been numerous smaller and no less troubling cases of harassment, land grabbing, and even forced conversions. These issues are often compounded by weak enforcement by law enforcement agencies, which are designed to protect minorities, which leaves many Hindus feeling abandoned. The international community, including neighboring India, has expressed concern about these incidents, but there's been little effective action. Advocacy groups have also called for stronger protections and more robust laws. However, the deep-rooted nature of these issues means that without any significant political will, the targeting of Hindus in Bangladesh is likely to continue. These recent instances of violence demonstrate that even under the current government, under the highly renowned Nobel Peace Laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, Hindus in Bangladesh remain at risk. The situation could deteriorate even further if the more extreme forces which are at play in Bangladesh put more pressure on the Yunus-led interim government. As of now, the student leaders who led the mass protests against Sheikh Hasina, which led to her fall from power, have said that they don't want either the fascists or the army back in power. The reference to fascists, of course, was both to the BNP and to the Jamaat. But whether Bangladesh is ready for a new language or even a new grammar of politics, one in which it is willing to shed the baggage and the divides of the past and turn a new leaf, create a new Bangladesh, a second liberation, that is what these idealistic student leaders are hoping, and in their hope, a country's future hangs in the balance.